Here we go, Wadsworth, a little Patreon exclusive, changing it up. No more full show alternate commentaries. We're going with individual matches from the archive. This is a little bit more digestible, I think, for all of our patrons.
Indeed, and going back to Youngstown, Ohio.
2007? Wow, a lifetime ago.
Tyler Black and M-Dog 20, of course, Matt Cross. And this was a little bit of a spotlight matchup at the time.
We gotta go back in time and lay out why it was a spotlight match.
As both of these two appeared on what's now almost become urban legend to some wrestling fans. Wrestling Society X was a very different presentation of professional wrestling at the time on MTV. And this was the night that it premiered. Not in its normal time slot. It was just a world premiere of the first episode outside of when it would normally air. And both of these two were on that show.
And we really thought we had something here with this. I mean, we did, in retrospect, we did.
Listen, and compared to a lot of what was on AAW shows at the time, I mean, I always talked about Tyler Black for that era that he was in, that first run that he had there in AAW. He was absolutely the MVP of AAW. He, without a doubt, it didn't matter who he was in there with, it was going to be the best match on the show.
And I guess, to give people a little bit more background on this predates Tyler Black in Ring of Honor. This predates a lot of his breakout stuff. Up until this point, he had really only done like IWA Mid-South in AAW because that's where he trained. And then, he would just do random independents. And he came to us via recommendation of Shima Zion, a.k.a. Joaquin Wild on NXT.
Joaquin Wild.
Joaquin Wild. He was a big advocate for Tyler Black at this time. And we've said it on podcasts and things before. Tyler Black would drive all the way from Iowa, turn around and go either home or to wherever his next booking was, and he was a very hungry guy and very determined to make it, especially during this era. And for both these guys, they thought, much like the whole industry thought, Wrestling Society X was going to just launch them into superstardom.
Indeed. I mean, it was, like I said, I was getting to it was a very different presentation. It wasn't anything like anything you would see on TV. And obviously at this time, we were essentially, WWE was the product. The Monday Night Wars were long over with. But it was completely different. It was a very MTV presentation. And everybody was convinced that it was going to be just completely revolutionary. It lasted one season, didn't get another shot after that.
I think they taped a second season, maybe, or something like, I don't know. Somebody's probably there's some sort of DVD box set out there or something. But Kevin Kleinrock was the man behind it all, and it did not turn out the way that everybody thought it was going to turn out. I'll say that much. Maybe a little ahead of its time, while being a little behind the times at the same time.
Well, and
look at that camera
of course,
angle.
I believe we had done this entire show previously at one point on an alternate commentary with quite the crowd here. And in case you forgot, obviously, this also predates Smart Mark Video being involved in AIW.
Yeah,
these were in-house cameras. And as you can see by that switch in shots, very different quality between the cameras.
I think that's Nick Sanka's running the camera there on the stage, I believe. But yeah, it's this is why we will probably never go back to producing things on our own.
And you see the exchange between these. I mean, by far the most athletic guys we had. What was unique that what we were doing with Tyler Black that literally no one else was, and it seems crazy when you look at his career trajectory since he went to WWE. No one used him as a heel.
Right, and he's a bit of a heel here. He really later on in his AAW run really embraces being a heel and embraces cutting promos, which is something he never did, especially this early on in his career. He was, a in shape, good athletic guy who was, putting on good matches everywhere he went. But, he really wasn't doing a ton of character work.
And obviously, in case you haven't figured it out thus far, M-Dog also a heel. But this is the night that would end with him and AJ Styles beating up Starless.
Yeah, who was the hometown hero. That's why we were running in the Youngstown area. He was enrolled at Youngstown University. So this is a very much college-aged crowd, really promoted by, former AIW Intense champion, now retired, probably in some EC3 background videos at this point.
I believe he is involved with some of the projects that EC3's been doing recently.
But no longer wrestles. And, this show was 100%, promoted pretty much by him. And, he was all over the Youngstown State campus and, getting the seats filled. And that's why we ran Youngstown at this time.
Indeed, it was a combination. It was him and Patrick Hayes was a Youngstown native. So
and Tom Dunn also, but
by the way, looks identical in 2007 to 2021.
Yeah, he could be. Tom Dunn could be 24 there. He could be 44 there. Nobody really knows. Tom Dunn has lived in a frozen cryonic time capsule. I think his entire wrestling career, or maybe he's a vampire.
Well, right there, you see, man. I mean, I don't think anybody has to be told how good and how athletic these guys were then and still are today.
The thing that's interesting, though, watching this now is, obviously M-Dog is the veteran. He will always be the veteran. But when you look at this, Tyler Black, Seth Rollins is the guy that went on to superstardom, in which, people would associate always kind of in that upper echelon spot. But here in this situation, Matt Cross is the, he's the veteran.
Indeed, Tyler Black had, as we said, he had some buzz going, but wasn't anywhere near where he would be, even though he was night in and out. Anytime he showed up in AIW, he was having the best match. His talent was on display. His drive was on display, but he still had a long way to go to get to who people know as Seth Rollins now.
Right. And like I said, this predates Age of the Fall and, his Ring of Honor run, Ring of Honor World Champion, all that stuff, is still to come at this point in his career. He's still very young in his career right here.
See that chop? These two going at each other. And it was unique trying to watch them figure out almost who, as you said, there was a lot of character work that really Tyler Black wasn't overly comfortable with when he came to AIW.
He began training, it looks like, in 2004. What's this? So this is maybe 2.5 years into his run.
Indeed, he was. I mean, as you said, when we first brought him into AIW, and at this point he's been fairly established, but is short of even winning the Intense title, which was really kind of what most people think of when they think of Tyler Black's run in AIW, was his time spent as Intense champion, beginning with the feud that would really kind of kick off at the end of the show with Starless, and would eventually transition to that feud with Johnny Gargano. And he was still fairly young when we started with him, even back in the Peabody's days. I mean, he was a scramble guy, basically.
Right. Yeah, he came in, he would do, he did some scrambles and did some, multi-man things as, kind of as a way to get established. But, he's probably 20 here, probably not even 21 years old.
He was definitely pretty young at this point. And I mean, obviously Matt was as well, but was a few years older. And as you said, he had been going, since the late 90s, early 2000s. Even if you only count from when he got trained, it was still late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah, so he was born in May of 1986, so he's maybe 21 years old here. You know, I don't recall the exact date of this event as we're recording this. So
Yeah.
very, very young, in his wrestling career. A little Trey Lamar springboard clothesline action there.
And you see him obviously going for the cover. And it was very much, it's crazy to watch a match and see how good he was at this point, and to realize that he wasn't a seasoned veteran at that point.
Yeah, he was just always, so much, far ahead of the pack from so many guys on the independent level, especially during this era, 2007.
I mean, it did not take long for him to become really good at what he was doing. And this was kind of a perfect matchup style-wise. I mean, even heel M-Dog, who doesn't do a lot of his high spots in that, is still incredibly capable of obviously turning up the pace and matching what Tyler Black would do.
And, it really is a shame kind of looking back at this now, because these guys did think, at this moment in time that they were going to be, MTV level celebrities and MTV superstars.
And it was. I mean, I don't remember if it was necessarily as this match was happening or shortly thereafter this match that it was airing. And everybody was pretty sure it was a matter of time at that point. I mean, because the product was incredibly unique. It was very exciting wrestling. I mean, it was
right, and they were, they had signed a lot of exciting independent guys, a lot of international people, and they were going to present a style that wasn't being presented on American television at this point. This is like I don't even think TNA was like widely accessible on television. Maybe at this point, I can't remember.
Well, yeah, exactly, and then you had guys like this that were not even on the, it's so weird to look back on now, but they weren't on the WWE radar. They weren't signing independent guys like they have since NXT became a product and since that became something that they actually pursued. At the time, if you weren't coming from another sport,
I think this is the finish here.
They weren't interested. Indeed, Tyler Black gets it with a roll-up and has Matt crawling towards the corner.
And that'll do it. Thanks for watching.